Hey friends, so welcome to today's talk about cash flow. This definitely feels like a funny thing to do a podcast about because I won't be showing you my spreadsheet. I'm just going to be talking about cash flow and why I love it. So, first of all, if you're new here, my name is Sharon Zimmerman. I'm a business consultant for small business owners, primarily for the jewelry industry, though I have a broad history of helping people across lots of artist industries and lots of solo business owners just in general. I got really passionate about cash flow, which to my mind, I'm just going to say it like it sounds like a really funny thing for me to say, I'm super passionate about cash flow, but it honestly changed so much about how I used to run my business that I became like the spokesperson for cash flow. In addition to being the spokesperson for pricing, which, surprise, they have a little bit of an intersection with your finances. And it really started because I was struggling. So I don't mind sharing with you some of my more personal adventures in entrepreneurship. And it was definitely rough waters there for a lot of years. I thought I had my focus in the right place, and I kind of learned almost like 5 years into running my jewelry business that I was really focusing on some of the wrong things. And I'll backtrack and say the wrong things for me. We can all enter this industry, we can all enter our artisan businesses with this idea of what we think we want to do. And we can all enter it with this idea of how we think we should proceed. And so much of how we proceed, so much of how we do our day to day operations really depends all the way back on our goals. And my goals and my practices were completely misaligned. My goal was to be self sufficient financially through my business. That was actually a core goal of mine. And I would even sometimes feel embarrassed about stating it because that didn't seem to be other people's core goals. I didn't really care about popularity or getting press. Like, it was a nice to have, but it wasn't a core goal of mine. I wanted to make a living doing what I love doing. And I knew that in order to do that, I was going to need to sell. Now, when I say that I was misaligned with my goal, it wasn't that I was making work that was not commercial enough. That was actually not it. It was that I wasn't focused on the right places to spend my money. It meant that I wasn't focused on the right places for me to show up with my work. I kept trying to shoehorn what I was doing and what I was making into other people's framework. And I'm going to explain to you with more specificity about what I mean. So I entered my own business as a jewelry designer in 2011. I had already worked in the industry for almost 5 years. I'd been in metalsmithing for a few years before that. So by the time I started my own business, you're looking at like close to already a decade of jewelry experience, on top of all of the retail sales and marketing experience I'd had in my past careers. And I entered this business thinking, well, I kind of know how this works already, right? I've worked in the industry. I've talked to other people. I know what they're doing. I know what shows they're going to. And probably I should do that too. That was my first mistake because a lot of what other people were doing was done out of their desires and their goals to gain press, to be in the big accounts, to have a bunch of wholesale accounts. And I thought that's what I should do. And I'm putting should in big air quotes for any of you who are listening and not watching, because should is a very interesting word when you run your own business, because a lot of times we should be stepping back and asking ourselves if somebody else's should is our should. Sometimes it's not. So what I had to do for the first few years of my business was scramble, 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 try to sell wherever I could. I was selling on Etsy. I was taking on consignment accounts. I was doing every show I possibly could. And I'm actually, I have to say, a really big fan of this approach. You learn so much in this process. You learn about what work lands with people. You learn about what stores are interested in and how stores are selling. You learn about what consumers are interested in. Like, I tell people this all the time. The work that I often have put into my own website for jewelry when I was still selling it full time, and the work that I've put into my clients' websites for jewelry, so much of it stems from in person experience and really listening to people. A lot of people think, like, hey, Sharon, you're an extrovert. You just like talk to people, like, you're really good at talking to people. But honestly, when you're doing that in person sales work, a lot of it is listening. How do people describe what you're doing? What are they picking up? What are they looking at? How are they interacting with it? Are they having a reaction to your pricing that's positive or negative? This is all tremendous information that you can repurpose. So, big fan of getting yourself physically in front of people if you are able to in those early years of running your business. But all of this is to say that I was taking a throw spaghetti at the wall approach, which again, big fan of. You learn a lot. Uh, but I kept misaligning my core goal, which again was financial independence, with what I saw other people doing. And what I kept seeing other people doing, and I'll also share with you the piece that I was missing. The part that I saw other people were doing was pursuing wholesale. There is nothing wrong with pursuing wholesale. I absolutely did that. It gave me a lot of great feedback on my work. It did help grow my business to a certain extent. It really did help me develop these relationships with people. I learned more and more every day about what was selling and what wasn't. But in the meantime, I wasn't really paying a whole lot of attention to e-commerce. And keeping in mind that we're talking about the years between, say, 2011 and 2016. And I had been an e-commerce manager for another brand. So I was aware of what it could do. I was aware of how well it could function, even for a small brand. And I was aware of how much more profitable it was. And the thing is, I kept telling myself, like, oh, but I'm still going to need to build up my reputation. I'm still going to need to do all of this other work. I'm still going to need other people to know me, or that's a later process, or that's something that I can aim for. And it didn't occur to me until later that it was also something that I could also be actively working on. But had my attention divided. I kept thinking, I'm going to go to do wholesale. I'm going to do these trade shows. I'm going to build up my presence. I'm really going to build up my reputation. And I listened when people said, oh, well, it can take like 2 years or more to really like gain profit from these trade shows. And I thought, well, yeah, but I know what I'm doing and probably I'll be fine. Like, at least I'll break even. And the truth is that I didn't really understand what my break-even point was. I kept matching revenue to what I was spending. And it's really revenue minus your cost of goods to what you're spending, meaning that all of the materials that you spent money on to make all of your samples for the trade show have to be backed out of any money that you make to account for what you spent. So it's not just, oh, you made $10,000 at a trade show and you spent $10,000 easy peasy. It's you spent $10,000 on all of this material that you needed to make the order. So it's really more like $7,000. And you spent $10,000 on the trade show. You're actually running at a loss. And I'm telling you this profitability part of it because I kept failing to understand why I constantly felt like I was scrambling, even though I was filling orders. And I was filling orders. I would get back from the show and I'd have like 4 or 5 orders to fill. And I'd be looking at my bank account going, I don't know how I'm going to order the materials I need to make this. Now, again, this was a misalignment of my core business goal, which again was financial freedom, financial independence, and what I was actually doing. Because what I was doing was, well, I thought I have to build up my reputation. And to a certain extent, that is true, but there's other ways to do that. We can get to that in another podcast. But when I would sit down and look at the numbers, nothing was adding up. Or the math wasn't mathing, as we sometimes say. And so I really had to sit down and take a hard look at my numbers. Now, I knew my pricing was profitable. That part I could tell. But why was my bank account feeling constantly empty? Why did I keep looking at those Square loans? And if you know, you know. Why are you looking at those Shopify loans right now? It's because your bank account feels a little thin and you're thinking, I could really use that extra cushion. And the truth is that I was just not managing my cash flow. So I had to make some changes. And I did talk to some folks who knew more than I did, some folks outside of the jewelry industry, which was honestly like really, really important because there are some things in our industry that don't function like other industries. And it's great to get an outsider's perspective to say, hey, that actually doesn't make any sense. Those numbers aren't adding up. So I did a review of my cash flow. After I'd done a review of my pricing, profitable, no problem, profit and loss statement, it looked okay. It could be improved. I realized like I was only bringing in like at the end of the day with all things said and done, I was barely cracking like a 10% profit margin total. Like once you back out all of the expenses, that was not enough because profit when you're a solo business owner, not an LLC, not an S Corp, when you're a solo business owner, profit is likely your owner draw and pay, right? 10%, not really enough. And I was also in this bind where I was thinking, this is too much work. I'm going to need to hire someone. And I don't have a cushion for that. So either the work needs to slow down and be more profitable, or the work needs to pick up and be more profitable. And which one am I going to do? So here's where cash flow comes in. So if you're not totally familiar with the idea of cash flow, it is a different measurement of the money in your business than either profit and loss or pricing. Very different than gross profit versus net profit. It is literally the measure of the money coming in and out of your business on a day-to-day basis, on a week-to-week basis, on a month-to-month basis. I often talk to my clients about this, and the terms that I've used for students and clients in the past is it's kind of like monitoring your bank account with one added feature, which is that you are working a little bit harder to predict the money that you think is going to be coming into your business and predicting the money that you expect to leave it. That second part is usually a little bit easier. It's that top line that's harder. So let me explain. And I'm doing this without using a spreadsheet, though I definitely use spreadsheets with a lot of my clients. I find them to be like incredible tools to use. But it goes a little bit something like this. So I know what my monthly expenses are, right? Those are usually pretty fixed. There's not a lot of changes. I might also know that I have this big wholesale order that needs to go out in a month. Well, when do I need to order all of the parts and materials to make that order? Well, at least 4 weeks out. So here we have a payment that's going to come in for, let's say, $5,000, but I know I need to spend $2,000 just to make the order, right? So it's June 1st, let's say, and you need to spend $2,000. You're not going to get that $5,000 until July 1st. So where is that $2,000 going to come from? That's usually the big question that especially a lot of people in small maker businesses, this is where the big question comes in. How do I get that $2,000 to make the $5,000? Great question. And that is where your cash flow comes in. Because now you might be looking at, well, what other sales are coming in that could cover this bill? Is this a moment to put something on a credit card and make sure that you schedule that repayment when the wholesale order gets paid for? That is one way that a lot of people fund and finance those materials purchases. Maybe you need to talk to your bank and get a line of credit so that it can also be covered. This is also where a lot of folks use those Square and Shopify loans, knowing that it can be repaid within like a month's time. Now, there are some pitfalls that I'll share with you that I've experienced, that many business owners have experienced, which is you put the materials on a credit card with the expectation that it can be paid off in a month. Well, what if that wholesale account decides that, oh, actually, we need to delay the payment? Oh, whoops. It happens, right? Sometimes wholesalers are late with the payments and you're sitting there like itching, like, okay, like it's been 3 days, it's been 5 days, it's been 10 days. When am I going to get paid for this? Because I owe my credit card $2,000. Now we're past that 30 days. I'm going to incur fees. Like this is now more than $2,000. So that is a pitfall because you have to anticipate that that payment is going to come on time. So this is an example of one payment of materials and one order coming in. It's a very clear connection, right? The money is going out, $2,000. The money's coming in, $5,000. The timing isn't great because they're spread out by like a month. So one other strategy that I started employing was working with my suppliers to be on net 30 terms for them, meaning I could now order from them a little bit more free and clear in the brain, $2,000 worth of materials. And now I owe them the money at about the same time that I'm expecting to get paid the money. Now I've made that connection between the pay out and the pay in a lot more clear. So this was one of the ways that I started like shifting my mindset around when the money was coming in and when it was going out, and my feelings of anxiety around it. Because let's face it, a lot of times these feelings around money can be very, very anxious. So that was one strategy and tactic that I took, was to work with my suppliers and make sure that I could be on net 30 terms with them. If it's an option to you, I would absolutely suggest taking it. It will definitely make a difference in your cash flow. So this whole process, though, started me on another path, though, which was to look at what sales opportunities and selling opportunities was I not taking because I was so focused on wholesale. So this was the other strategy that I started working on to make that wholesale connection a little bit easier. And this was when I started really turning my attention to things like e-commerce and turning back to more in-person direct-to-consumer selling. So like art fairs, craft shows, random trunk shows, show up in a friend's backyard, right? Like whatever I could do to sell in person directly to the person and basically get more profit per sale, even if the sales were fewer, right? Because you can sell 10 items at wholesale, but you're selling at somewhere between 40 and 60% of your retail price, right? Versus selling direct to a person, maybe you sell fewer pieces, but every sale is more profitable. You get more profit from each piece when you do that, right? So I took this tactic and I thought, well, what if I could boost my e-commerce sales by just a little bit? What if I got one more sale each month, even if it was one more $250 sale each month? What does that do to my numbers? And it changed. Like, I have to tell you, like, getting one $250 sale each month over the course of a year, it changed some of my profitability. It absolutely had an impact on my cash flow, and it wasn't a huge change. But it really sparked something in my head to start asking, how else can I improve this? What else can I do with this? And how else can I press this idea and really develop a more profitable business? And so this was when I started asking myself if these trade shows were really worth it, right? Like, you spend anywhere from 5 to 10 grand out the door, like that's it. And you don't necessarily make money back doing it. Some people do. Some people do amazing at them. Some people don't. It is, honestly, it can be kind of I was going to say a bad word, but it can be a little persnickety. How about that? We'll say persnickety. I really went through this process of thinking about, do I really need to still be doing trade shows, right? This was a big chunk of money going out the door. And again, a huge impact on cash flow, because you might have to make, say, a partial payment. There goes $2,000. There goes $3,000. There goes $1,000. All of the stuff you have to order, you have to get your tickets, you have to get your hotel, you've got to like make sure you've got a food budget. And these were large lump sums of money going out the door, and I didn't necessarily have the cash on hand to cover it, because the expectation might be, well, the spend that you're doing for this trade show is going to be covered by the sales that you make at the trade show. Well, what happens if you have a zero sales trade show? It's happened to me. It's happened to lots of people. What happens if you have a break-even trade show? It's happened to me. It's happened to lots of people. And what happens if you have a very profitable trade show? Happens to me. Happens to a lot of people, right? There's all of these different scenarios that could be possible, but the question that was on my mind is, how am I supposed to be covering these bills in the meantime? The answer was I needed to fill it up with sales from other places, but the other thing I was noticing is that maybe I would make some extra e-commerce sales, would cover the cost of this trade show, but I was still feeling behind on everything. It still felt like my bank account was very thin on cash on hand. And it felt like I was lacking the flexibility to make other choices in my business because I didn't have enough cash on hand. So I had to come to a pretty, I would say, emotional decision to stop doing these bigger, more expensive trade shows because I could look at the numbers and see if I hadn't gone to some of them, I would be in the exact same financial place. But here I was going to them and scrambling to like make this work that would potentially make me money while I had to make other work that was bringing in the money and not feeling like I was getting ahead even though business was coming in the door. This was actually kind of a hard thing to wrap my head around because I knew so many other people in the industry who were in this exact same place. And so it felt very normal. It felt very normalized. And I was realizing, hey, I'm going to have to make some decisions that buck most of the common trends that I was seeing in the industry at the time. I was going to start shifting my focus to direct to consumer and let wholesale do what it was doing. I would still do my outreach. I would still show up for trunk shows. I would still remind buyers to order if they were low on product. I was still going to do all of that, but I was going to stop spending money in that big way. And I was going to take the budget that I would have spent, and I was going to take the attention that I would have given it, and I was going to shift that to a direct-to-consumer look. I was going to shift that to a direct-to-consumer strategy. That was kind of a big shift in my business. In 1 year when I made this change, and this comes after the like slight attention shift to e-commerce, but in 1 year of shifting away from doing trade shows, in 1 year of shifting to focusing more on e-commerce in person, even doing some custom, though I eventually stopped because custom was not my cup of tea. If it's your cup of tea, it's incredibly profitable. Highly recommend. But in 1 year, I used to have a ratio of about 40% of my sales were direct to consumer or retail level, like full price, and about 60% of my sales were for wholesale. In 1 year, I flipped that ratio. And that was the year that I started paying myself on a regular basis. And it was huge. Like just being able to like not just grab some cash out of my business accounts like when I needed it, but to actually like start setting up some regular payments, even though sometimes they were small. The fact was I had the cash on hand to be able to pay myself. I was increasing my profit. And I wasn't necessarily working anymore. And a lot of this revelation came out of me sitting down, looking at my cash flow and going, oh no. Of looking at my cash flow and saying, you don't have the money to pay that $1,000 of a deposit to that trade show. You don't have it. So what are you going to do instead? A lot of it helped me really refocus on learning new things. And that was huge too, because it kept me engaged in my business because I started asking myself, what if? What if I looked up some information about e-commerce and selling? And again, as I mentioned, I used to be an e-commerce manager. I, in theory, knew all of this, but I had trouble applying it to my own business. So I started applying it. I started thinking back and remembering what I'd done with this other designer's business as her e-commerce manager. I looked up current information, current data, current statistics. I learned from advisors. I did actually work with an SEO expert for a little bit who taught me so much. I highly recommend going that route, especially if somebody's willing to teach you. And it shifted. I started getting routine sales, like almost reliable sales via my website, via email marketing, via, at the time, Instagram, though that stopped being as relevant for me. But I started shifting my attention. I put in the work and it improved my profits and it deeply improved my cash flow. And that meant so much to me. That was the first time that I started feeling financially stable in my business. And it was because I could see and felt like I had an easier time predicting what money was going to come in when I knew what money needed to go out. And the ease of mind that came from having that handle on my cash flow was tremendous. And it's a process that I've recommended to a lot of clients over the years, even when they don't feel like they don't, quote, get it at first. I will share with them that I also didn't get it at first. I actually went through a business planning class I eventually taught for, a business planning class that taught me about cash flow. And I got it from like the spreadsheet perspective, but I didn't get it in the apply this to your business perspective until I was really in it and really needed to understand it. And I think that's why I've become so passionate about messaging this to other people about why this is important, because this can really shift all of your business strategies if you turn your attention to this core and key part of your business. So let me know what you think about cash flow. I would actually love to hear from you about what you've learned about cash flow. And yeah, at some point, I might actually start sharing a cash flow template that I've used for myself, that I've used for a lot of clients. It's in the development process, so it's not ready yet, but look for it as a download coming, let's say by 2026. Let's be realistic, because one thing that cash flow taught me is that you can be realistic about your numbers. If you enjoyed listening to this podcast, I would really deeply appreciate a like, a subscribe, a sign up for my newsletter, all of the things, a visit to my website. All of this helps me grow my business too.